to talk all about women's studies today and stories. Paloma Allion with Dove Story. When I was reading about you and you were putting this together, you decided you wanted to say real ladies, real stories to bring women together around the world. Where did this idea come from?
This idea came from many of my personal stories and the way that I've connected with women. My closest friends and closest relatives are people with whom I've shared real stories about my life. And today with Facebook and Instagram,
you can reach out to anybody.
You can reach out to anybody, and they're awesome platforms, but they're also platforms where we put our best foots out, right? We put our best selves out there. So that may be, I'm traveling to Turkey, or I've just gotten a puppy.
Or divorce, or other things that happen in your life, right?
Yeah, but I think those things, like divorce or the other things that happen, are not as commonly shared on social media, and that's okay. I think privacy is important as well, but when I look at my friends or my peers' Instagram and Facebook accounts, I see fun and I see confidence, and I don't see in between, and there is a lot in between. And so Dove Story is a place for us to share that in between.
Why the name Dove Story?
The name Dove Story because my name is Paloma, and Paloma means dove in Spanish. That being said, when I used to travel to Spanish-speaking countries, people would say, "Do you know what your name means?" And I would say, "It means a dove." And they would flap their arms at me and they'd say, "No, no, no, it means a pigeon." And so there was this always a tension between being a dove and a pigeon. And now that I'm older, I see that I'm both. I'm a dove and I'm a pigeon. And a dove is elegant and beautiful and confident and a symbol of peace. And when we think of a pigeon, we think of something gray that's looking for nourishment. And those are two different things, yet one and the same. And I think that most of us are both of those things.
You're only 24 years old, but you've seen a lot of the world. Tell me about your background and your family.
Okay. My parents are from Turkey. They are from Istanbul, so I grew up around every 2 to 3 years going there. And my mother moved to the States when she was 15 years old, knew my dad in Turkey. My dad followed her 4 years later to live in the States. And they were married for, I think, around 20 years. And then, hopefully he's okay with me sharing this, I think he is, he came out when I was 13 years old. My dad came out to be gay. And so...
Tell me about that meeting, because you write about it on your website, where your parents said to the kids, "We have something to tell you," right?
Yes. Yes, so I have a brother as well. He's 3 years younger than me, Jonah. And we were in Mexico. I was 13 at the time, he was 10. I had just had my bat mitzvah, which was a great party and another symbol of this perfect family, or what a lot of people thought was a perfect family, and in some ways it is, in some ways it isn't. And so after that bat mitzvah, we were in Mexico, and it was a 9-day trip, and 6 days into it, my parents sat Jonah and I down, and with tears and hesitation, they said to us, "Everything's gonna be okay. We're still a family, ... your dad is gay." And that was a wow moment in our lives. I think a lot more families today are going through similar episodes. And it's a moment I'll always be grateful for, because although it was difficult, it taught me that we are my perfect parents, my dad who danced crazy at the bat mitzvah, and my mom who is beautiful and elegant and poised. We all have stuff going on.
So did that start this website? Here, I am sharing my story. I want you women around the world to share stories so that we can start a dialogue with each other.
That particular, there are a lot of stories that inspired Dove Story. That's an example of a story. Another example of a story, going back to Turkey. I was in Turkey a few summers after I found out about my father, and my mom had lost a lot of weight because she was struggling with the divorce. And my mom and I were sitting next to a woman, and the woman looked at us and she said, you know, your daughter, she's really beautiful. If she lost a bunch of weight, you could enter her into a beauty pageant. And that was me. And I was overweight. I was around 172 pounds at the time, which for me and my figure at that time was a bit overweight. And I always think of that story now when I think of what really is at the crux of Dove's story for me, because after that moment, I became obsessive with exercise and the way I ate and this idea of perfection, and that's so tiring to chase that.
No one's perfect.
Yeah.
Right. What do you hope, as people talk about all kinds of things, and women have many different lives, and you start to gather the stories, dovestory.org, by the way, what do you plan to do with all of these stories? Do you plan to have some big conference somewhere and get everybody in a room? Do you know where this is headed?
The project didn't start with this is my exact end goal in mind. It was really, I was seeking a creative outlet for myself. And so like you said earlier, I did want to share some of my own stories. And then I thought how powerful if I include other women in this storytelling project. I see it going in the direction of possibly a book. I see it going in the direction, meaning a compilation of women's stories. I see it going in the direction of, right now, we're actually in the midst of a campaign where come June 1st, based on the number of Facebook likes that Dove's story has, we'll be giving that amount of likes worth in money to a charity or an organization. And right now there are 2 organizations nominated. One is Girl Right Now, and one is Right Girl. Right Girl is based in LA, Girl Right Now in New York City. And so those organizations help young women find their voice through creative writing. And I was really shy as a young girl, and I think creative writing, this is another catalyst for Dove's story. Creative writing really helped me find my voice. So I would love to work with organizations like those.
Now you're about to move to New Zealand.
Yes.
And you can take a website anywhere with you.
Yeah.
How do you think that's going to change your perspective? I mean, you're going to meet women in New Zealand that you don't know. And like you say, you are providing a platform for people to tell their stories. What is more powerful than that?
I hope so. Yeah, that's a good question. I was a bit nervous about moving to New Zealand for that reason, as in I have a social network here, and right now, if you read the stories on Dove's story, many of those women or girls are either in my social network or know me from somebody who knows me, and I would love to expand beyond that. So now I am excited that New Zealand will hopefully offer me that door to sharing women's stories from all over the world. I think it's going to be difficult in New Zealand because my boyfriend is Kiwi. He's from New Zealand, and one thing that we talk about often is vulnerability and communication. And
you're so wise at 24.
Thank you. Thank you.
Maybe that's because you've traveled so much.
Maybe, yeah.
Or that's just who you are.
Yeah.
How do people send you their stories to get on your website?
So there is a submit section of the website where my email address is there, and paloma@dovestory.org. So girls, women, right now I say ages 18 to 65, but honestly, the reason I start at 18 is because some of the stories are heavy. Mm-hmm. There's some sexual assault in there, there's some cancer in there, and I don't know
everything.
Yeah. But it really doesn't need to stop at 65. I think that my grandmother relates to these stories. I think it's a lot of women relate to these stories.
You have such social awareness, and you have a give back piece too, which I think is so important to women your age. They're doing a lot of that. Anybody who's building a website these days, or even a business, wants there to be a give back piece. It's so important. Do you feel that?
Yeah, I think it's huge. One of my first jobs out of university was at Google, and I was really attracted to that job and that role because it was Google, and I think Google stands for that as well, which is very attractive, giving back to the world and doing something meaningful. My role within Google was focused on AdWords and optimizing AdWords accounts. And I struggled a bit with that day-to-day role because, like a lot of millennials, I'm seeking to make that impact and make it now. And I know patience is important, but yeah, it is a big part of my world, especially in San Francisco. I feel I'm surrounded by people who really want to drive change. So it's exciting.
If you look back on this in 5 or 10 years, what will this become? Do you have any idea?
I don't have an exact idea, but I hope that it will become, right now, it's, like I said, it's kind of one demographic sharing their story. I hope that it'll become a space for all kinds of demographics, people from all over the world, women from all over the world, all ages, to be able to read a story about another woman. I could be in Ghana and read a story about somebody in New Haven, Connecticut, and I want that woman in Ghana to connect with that woman in Connecticut, and it would be awesome if they could start a conversation together. And that may be online, that may be via Skype. I don't know exactly what the channels will be at that point, but I would love to fuel a worldwide conversation.
Paloma, you're well on your way. Keep going, and thank you so much. TheDoveStory.org. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pursuits when one listen. Who is this girl I spend all night kissing? And if one was right here, then who else is missing? Got a little sidetracked if I'm a wishing. I find the keys to the door, but it's also a metaphor. Things keep locked in the grocery store, but mine just to save time. I'll skip right ahead to the last ride. The harder we look, the less we can see. Don't you know, that you need me.